Viewer discretion is advised for this video, as some of the following content may be too much for some viewers to handle. Now let's begin. Have you ever stopped and wondered what the internet would look like if we had invented it today? For most of us, the thought doesn't even enter our heads. The thing is that we've been using the internet for so long that it feels strange to imagine our lives without it. Well, you're not alone. There was a man who tried to imagine what the internet would look like if he had invented it. But that's not even the craziest part of the story. What makes the story even more mind-blowing is that this man did all of this 75 years ago. His name was Vannevar Bush, and he was an American electrical engineer, inventor, theorist, and executive who headed the U.S. government's wartime electronics research and development during World War II, and later served as chairman of the National Security Agency and the Atomic Energy Commission. He was also the mastermind behind one of the first computers ever built. But that's not why we're here. We are gathered here today to talk about his invention called Memex, which is basically a computer with a really advanced operating system for its time. It's important to note that back in 1945, when he presented his invention to the public, the world looked very different than it does now. Computers were just being used in factories. They were massive machines that took up entire rooms. People couldn't just walk up to them and start using them. You had to be an expert programmer to use them, and they were mostly used for calculations and ballistics and things like that. So Bush knew that in order for his invention to be accepted, he needed to package it in a way that people could understand. That's why he didn't call it a computer, but instead called it a Memex. That's because he wanted people to think of it as a device that could hold all the knowledge of the human race. He said, "A Memex is a device in which all the information in the world can be stored and from which any individual can be consulted. It consists of two parts, the store and the interrogator. The store is a device for making permanent the recorded experience of mankind. In this respect, it differs from the contemporary storage devices in that it is intended to deal with the mass of literature and the aggregate of the world's knowledge." At first glance, the Memex looked like a typewriter with a screen on top, but that was just the physical manifestation of it. It wasn't until you powered it on that you realized what it was truly capable of. When you powered it on, the screen came to life with thousands of glowing letters and numbers. The device was equipped with a set of rotating drums, each of which could store millions of characters of data. Bush believed that the power of the Memex lay in its ability to allow users to connect ideas together in new and creative ways. He said, "The Memex is a device for making creative research. Its purpose is to come to grips with the great, complex, unruly mass of the world's knowledge, and to simplify it in some measure by making the interrelations between ideas more accessible." With the Memex, Bush believed that anyone could become a researcher. All you had to do was know how to ask the right questions. Let's see an example. Imagine you're writing a paper on the French Revolution, and you need to find all the books that have been written about it. You could spend hours searching through library catalogs and databases trying to find them all, or you could just ask the Memex and it would spit out a list of them in seconds. But that's not all. Let's say that while you're researching, you come across a new and interesting idea that you hadn't considered before. You can save that idea to your own personal library within the Memex where you can organize it and expand upon it. When you're finished with your research, you can publish your findings directly from the Memex to anyone else who might be interested in reading them. Bush believed that the Memex would revolutionize the way we learn and work. He said, "It will extend our vastly undersized memory and become a kind of second brain, making possible for a far larger number of people to take part in the processes of modern scientific research and in the preparation of materials for public information." Sadly, Bush's vision for the future of the Memex was never fully realized. You see, when he presented it to the public in 1945, he did so without realizing the potential consequences of his actions. The fact is that Bush had just described a world in which anyone with a Memex could have access to all the information in the world and share their thoughts and ideas with anyone else who had a Memex. This was a world in which traditional hierarchies of power and control would be completely disrupted, and those in positions of power were not happy about that. For example, the U.S. military was concerned that the Memex could be used to spread subversive information and propaganda. As a result, they pressured President Truman to veto the funding for further development of the Memex. Additionally, Bush's colleagues at the time didn't understand the potential impact of his invention, and they failed to support him. Bush was already a controversial figure due to his work on the Manhattan Project and his outspoken views on civil rights and the role of science in society. And the Memex was seen as yet another example of his radicalism. In the end, the Memex was shelved and Bush went on to other things. However, his invention did not go completely unnoticed. A few years later, the British engineer J.C.R. Licklider read about the Memex and was inspired to develop his own concept of a global computer network. Licklider's ideas were eventually put into action by the ARPANET, which would eventually evolve into the Internet as we know it today. So in a way, Bush's invention of the Memex is what led to the creation of the Internet. Now, you may be wondering, why should you care about this old story? Well, there are two reasons. First, it's a fascinating example of how someone can predict the future. Even though Bush didn't create the Internet, he did envision a world in which anyone could have access to all the information in the world and share their thoughts and ideas with anyone else. This is the world that we live in today. And it's important to remember that it wasn't always this way. There was a time when this type of information sharing was unimaginable. And there are still many parts of the world where it's not possible. Second, Bush's story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of stifling innovation. When Bush presented the Memex to the public, he did so without realizing the potential consequences of his actions. He had no way of knowing that the military and his colleagues would react the way they did. But because of their fear and misunderstanding, the Memex was shelved and Bush was ridiculed. This is a lesson that we need to keep in mind as we move forward. The future is full of possibilities, but we need to be aware of the potential dangers of our inventions and be prepared to defend them. As we wrap up this video, we want to leave you with one final thought. Vannevar Bush was a brilliant inventor and visionary, but he was also a product of his time. He lived in a world of privilege and power, and he never really saw the potential impact of his inventions on ordinary people. However, there are still people today who are working to make Bush's dream of a better world a reality. People like you. If you're passionate about technology and its impact on society, we encourage you to follow in Bush's footsteps and use your talents to make the world a better place. Who knows? Maybe you'll be the one to invent the next big thing. Thank you for watching this episode of Etzel's 101. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button, share this episode with your friends, and consider subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you'll be joining a community of over 1 million people who are all interested in learning about the amazing facts of the universe. We've got lots of amazing videos coming up, including more stories of incredible inventors. So don't miss out. Subscribe to Etris 110, YouTube's fastest growing channel of the history's most shocking facts.